Good morning. This is the RealClearPolitics Takeaway for Thursday, February 10th, 2022, and I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of RealClearPolitics.
I'm Phil Wegmann, White House Correspondent for RealClearPolitics.
Phil, let me ask you a couple of questions about the White House. We've got these Olympics going on in Beijing, but the administration is facing, meanwhile, Russian troops seem to be amassing on the Ukrainian border. Inflation is spiking, and although COVID cases seem to go, infections are going down, the death rate is still high. What at the White House right now? Which of those problems are they focused on most closely?
Well, it's tough to say which crisis they're dealing with most. They've had to deal with a number of different fronts. And just the other day, President Biden was speaking on the phone with French President Emmanuel Macron, who has been trying to move forward with diplomacy. He met with both Russian President Putin and his Ukrainian counterparts. The White House continues to hope that diplomacy is going to see them through the day, but they're warning that an invasion from Putin could be imminent.
You know, Phil, this president gets criticized a lot by the loyal opposition for being too slow, on the draw, and they've portrayed him as this doddering old man. But when he met with the new German chancellor, President Biden did something I'd never seen a president do before, and he did it very adroitly. He was nudging this guy to cancel the pipeline with Russia, which Germany had announced it wasn't going to do. And then after the meeting is over, President Biden, speaking for both of them, said, "Yep," and he's agreed to do what I want him to do on that. The chancellor of Germany wasn't. He hadn't said exactly what Biden said, but it sounded like it was like a big brother getting little brother to playing a pickup basketball game he was leery of. But they've now done it. Does Biden get any credit for that? It seemed like a pretty interesting sleight of hand.
Well, he's not going to get any credit from Republicans because remember, Republicans were complaining that he let Nord Stream 2 move forward. But the administration has argued long before the crisis flared up in the Ukrainian border that pipeline would actually give them leverage over the Russians. It would give them an opportunity to encourage good behavior. And I think what we saw with the president and his German counterpart the other day is that was an ace up his sleeve, and he was very eager to play it, even if it got the German prime minister in an awkward position.
Yeah. Now, on inflation, the administration went, for months saying inflation, sort of saying, not acknowledging inflation, and then going from there to saying, okay, it's here, but it's temporary. That's no longer the posture. From what all the Democrats I've talked to understand that this is a big problem for not just the administration and not just their party in election year, but the whole country. And, now what's the administration's tack going to be going forward with trying to curb inflation?
So far, they've said that the answer to inflation ought to be passing Build Back Better, that a lot of the reforms in that package would ease supply chain problems, would get the economy up and moving again. The problem is that the legislative outlook for that is incredibly bleak. And just today, we saw that inflation was at its highest ebb since 1982. The administration promised that this would be transitory, that they sort of hoped that it would go away on its own as the country emerged from the pandemic. But it looks like this is going to be lingering, not just into this year, but possibly into next. And inflation comes with the possibility of significant political consequences. I certainly expect that this is something that's going to drive the midterms. And thus far, the answers that the administration has put forward on this, they haven't come to a solution.
Well, you mentioned 1982, and I was thinking of that year this morning because that was when Ronald Reagan, who we now remember as this enormously popular president, but that was his first midterm elections. The economy was tough. Not only was inflation high, unemployment hadn't come down as much as Reagan thought it would. The interest rates were high. The economy was a mess, and the Democrats lost. I'm doing this off memory, Phil. You can check me later, but I think 26 seats in the House. If they lost 6 this year, Nancy Pelosi has to give up the gavel. So I think the Democrats with long memories, and Nancy Pelosi remembers that. She, like Reagan, came from California. But I don't know that there's anything anybody in Congress can do about it. And actually, I'm not sure anything at this point the White House can do. Some economists, including Larry Summers, who's a Democrat and worked in the Clinton administration, disagree that Build Back Better would help inflation. Reading Larry Summers, it sounds like it might even make it worse. So I don't know that there's anything the Biden administration could do. The good news seems to be the COVID case rate is falling. What's the White House? Is the White House nervous about this, or they think this is real and we're about to be where Joe Biden said we were last June?
I think they are still haunted by the memory of that early hope, which was President Biden walking out and on the 4th of July declaring independence from COVID, because the thought back then in 2021, which seems like ancient history, the thought was the vaccine would see us through all of this. The various variants have sort of crushed that hope, and we had to have another year of COVID restrictions. But as things seem to improve right now, the White House is in a tricky spot because they have always promised that they are going to follow the guidance of the CDC, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and others. And yet what we're seeing around the country right now is you have governors who are easing restrictions, and not just in red states, but also blue ones. So they are facing a pressure to sort of hurry up the timeline to return more to normal and to tell the CDC and the other health experts that all of us have been watching for 2-3 years now, to encourage them to say enough is enough, return to normal. But right now, the White House, they're very cautious. I think they're optimistic, but they're cautious and they don't want to rush anything.
Well, I think that's human nature, Phil. This is 2 years now. 2 years ago, this virus came roaring out of China, traveled the world, reminding us that we're a mobile people in the era of jet travel, went around the world in, a month or two. And now all the eyes of the world are on China again, but for a healthier reason. We're watching the Winter Olympics. And hopefully by the time the next Summer Olympics come around, this will be something, not a distant memory, because coronavirus is endemic now, but that the whole world will have learned how to cope. Not just the Biden administration. So, and with that, we'll leave it there. This has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, February 10th, 2022.